We're going to kick it over to the next topic here. We're going to talk a little bit about Bob Melvin. We kind of touched on it for a second, but we're going to talk a little bit about Bob Melvin, the coaching staff, and kind of how much blame do you think they deserve for the season they're having right now? They're what, 65 and 64. They have 33 games left. They signed all this talent. Now, I mean, we've commented on how, you know, it's a flawed roster and things like that, but they have all this talent that they bring in, and it feels like they're, you know, underperforming, failing to meet expectations. Just an overall underwhelming group.
Yeah.
You know, they've been this team for 3 straight years now. So to me, you know, a lot of it, as we mentioned earlier, it predates Melvin and all these guys, but it just feels like he cannot hit the right buttons at all. Someone called him the anti-Bochy at one point. I laughed, but there's a level of truth to it right now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?
So I understand a lot of the frustration. I kind of touched on this earlier. I understand a lot of it, where it's coming from. Here's my honest thoughts about it. It's more than just a managerial issue. To me, you look at the common denominator. What's the common denominator? I tweeted about this. What's the common denominator between Gabe Kapler and Bob Melvin and a lot of the issues that we're having right now? What's the similarity between the two of them? It's right there. It's right there. It's Farhan Zaidi. Okay. I've touched on this plenty of times in the past. He's involved a lot more than we think. It's not just, you know, the business and prospect and development side of things. He's in the day-to-day operations. There's no question about it. Because if you're comparing Bob Melvin's career, 3-time manager of the year, what he's done with a lot of trash, with low payroll, with development of prospects, like if you look at Bob Melvin's track record, he's proven that he's one of the better managers of, you know, the 2000s and 2010s. But it's one of those things where you can put any manager on this team and under Farhan Zaidi, and they're not going to succeed. You could have put Stephen Vogt on this team this year, and he would have struggled being under Farhan Zaidi. Meanwhile, he's thriving in Cleveland. It's a president of baseball operations / GM, but I don't give Pete Patilla too much heat. He's actually been decent since he's been moved into that role. But you look at that, you know, that branch right there and everything that kind of trickles down from it. And I think that's where a lot of the problems reside from. And then I touched on this earlier as well. If you're going to point at, you know, the hitting issues with this team and, you know, the situational hitting and runners in scoring position and, you know, a lot of these issues that we've been mentioning for quite some time, these issues have been prevalent since, you know, for the last 4 years. And look who's been at the core and who's been employed during that tenureship. It's been Justin Veely. Clearly his, you know, methodology and his philosophy doesn't work. And, you know, things aren't changing. It's still a mediocre, you know, offense. So if you're asking me, what can you do to immediately upgrade a lot of the issues on this team? You fire Farhan, you fire Veely, you place them with literally anybody else. And I think, you know, you could only go up from there.
Yeah. So George says Giants coaching staff is responsible for at least 7 to 10 losses, poor decision-making with bullpen and pinch hitting, very poor decisions on the 9th and in extra innings.
Yeah.
I mean, Melvin's track record since the rule change in extra innings is not great.
Yeah.
Like, it's really not. I mean, he was terrible in San Diego last season. He's been terrible this season. And this is where he's going to get some heat, and it's deserved. Like, he's not been great this year. He's not even really been good this season. But I struggle with how much blame you can really put on the guy when Farhan Zaidi's running the team. Yep. I mean, it is a flawed roster, and I'm not going to absolve, you know, Melvin from any blame because it's a flawed roster. You know, they filled the roster with a bunch of guys that have swing and miss. And then we get mad that they can't hit situationally. And it's like, gee, who would have saw that coming? Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. But, and also they got a bunch of guys that don't really have defined roles on this team. Yeah. That's another issue. But I don't understand why there's no ability to just give the manager the full autonomy to make the daily decisions with the roster, with the lineups, with the, how they do everything. Because they run this team exactly like they did under Kapler, except for there are like there are very minor differences where you can see, Melvin trying to go with his gut at times. He'll occasionally run, drop a bunt down, which hasn't worked out at certain times. He's trying to do some things, he'll occasionally do, put guys into motion. He'll occasionally do some things that he's trying to get them going, but they have a roster that's built to have a Gabe Kapler running it. Yeah. Farhan Zaidi built a split heavy, platoon heavy, whatever you want to call it, roster. And basically, unless you're going to run it by the data 100% of the time, which Kapler did without fail, you're probably going to underperform even as bad as this roster is, like, or as much as this roster is not great, you're going to underperform that. Yeah. So that's where I struggle with it. I feel like Melvin with a better team as far as like more defined roles would be a good manager. I think Melvin with a young team where he's allowed to just roll with the young guys, develop them, would be a better manager. I just think this current roster is not suited for a guy like Bob Melvin.
Agreed. It's just not a good fit. It's not that he's a bad manager. He's just a bad fit. And it all points to Farhan Zaidi and how he's constructed it and has his dirty little fingers in on the day-to-day operations. Why? I have no idea. Pride, ego, I don't know. But that's why I just emphasize, man. It's time to go, man. And I don't want to be negative. I don't want to, bark up that tree, and I don't want to kick that and beat that dead horse. But it's like we've been saying this for so long, and you can only. You and I talked about it a little bit today, where it's just like, yes, if you're comparing, pre-Farhan to 2024 Farhan, yes, the farm has more potential now than it did 7 years ago, but it took you 5-6 years to have a decent farm system. And it's just too little too late. And just in general, like George says right here, we need all around better players. Farhan hasn't proven that he can land those, though. That's the issue here. Yeah. The only reason that we were able to get Snell and Chapman is because Bob Melvin was hired. I guarantee you, if Bo Mel isn't the manager and we got Kapler, or, let's just say hypothetically, we didn't fire Kapler and didn't bring in Bo Mel, you don't have Blake Snell on this team. You don't have Matt Chapman on this team. And those have been two of the highlights of the 2024 Giants. And Farhan's not to credit for that. He gave them the most flexible deals ever for him and the Johnsons. They signed purely because, the market wasn't there and they wanted to play for Bo Mel. So that's just the sad reality of it.
Yeah. And that's where, like, Bo Mel wasn't my first choice. Anybody that knows, like, I'm on the record, I wanted Steven Vogt. Yeah. I constantly said I wanted Steven Vogt in the offseason, and they didn't go that route. It is what it is. And, would he have succeeded here under Farhan? I don't know. I'm not sure if anybody would have really succeeded under Farhan. But I would have felt good, or better about Vogt than I do about Bo Mel. But that's not to say I do think Bo Mel's a decent manager, and he has his flaws. The way he handles the pen.
That's his kryptonite.
Yeah, I mean, the way he handles the pen, and some of that is who he has. But I mean, I'm going to use this last game for example. They literally went with the bases loaded. They went to the worst guy in their pen that they could go to. Yeah, you cannot go to Spencer Bivens there. And I get it's, the right-hander and it's a righty-righty matchup, but like the numbers don't lie. Eric Miller, his batting average, the right-handers were hitting 223 against him. Spencer Bivens are hitting 255. Yeah. Like the numbers don't lie. And if we want to go Miller's, throwing 22 pitches or whatever, I don't really care. I trust him way more than I do Bivens in that spot. And the real issue I had, because I don't really have the issue pulling Webb, as Dan said earlier, Webb was dealing with some physical stuff. He was probably not available. The issues I have are you don't go to Walker, who's now your closer, which allegedly wasn't available, which I find to be completely asinine. He threw 11 pitches on Tuesday. Or sorry, Tuesday. Sorry, I was getting my days mixed up. He threw a whole 11 pitches, didn't pitch Monday, threw 11 pitches on Tuesday, and they had a day off today. You're telling me this guy couldn't have gone out there to get an out? Like,
1 out.
And if you don't want to go Walker, why are we not throwing here we go. Thank you, George. Why are we not throwing Taylor Rogers, who is on a week's rest?
Yeah.
Who has closing experience, who has like a sub-2 ERA in the 9th inning this season when he's been pitching in the 9th. How are we not going to Taylor Rogers in this situation? And I think is he injured and no one knows?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you in your tweet the other day when you were like, they can't even do the analytics right.
Yeah.
Like, it's true, because I mean the whole reason that they did it was the righty-righty matchup. But like you touched on, Eric Miller has a lower ERA against righties than Spencer Bivens does. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's brutal. Like that's the stuff where I'm like, I can't defend it. Like those are the things I can't defend. I've found ways to defend a lot of other mistakes he's made or moves he's made because, at the end of the day, I'm a big believer in the players are the ones out there on the field. And, I'm not going to get mad. Like when Fitzgerald failed to get the bunt down like a week or so ago, it was like, Fitzgerald's done a lot of great things. He didn't get the bunt down. And it's like, why are we having Fitzgerald bunt there? And it's like, okay, we can argue whether or not they should have had Fitzgerald bunt all day long. He needs to get the bunt down. And he didn't. Like, I can't blame Bo Mel for him not getting a bunt down. But, like, I just couldn't. I couldn't with the bullpen usage in that game against Chicago. I'm like, this is just horrible on every level. So it's just frustrating. Like, the whole thing has just been really, really frustrating. And I wonder if they just need guys with more defined roles. I wonder if, maybe he struggles. Bochy always, it was feel. He'd bring guys in for one batter, and they can't do that anymore with the 3-batter minimum and things like that. Maybe Melvin's just struggling to adjust to that.
I mean, he's an old school manager.
Yeah. I don't know. You see, I will say the one other difference I see with Melvin more is he does try to let the starters go longer than Kapler ever did.
Oh, for sure.
To a fault sometimes, but there have been a few times where we're like, why is this guy still out there? Birdsong getting lit up in the 2nd inning in Washington. He throws like 40 pitches and they put him out for the 3rd. It's like, dude, like, get him out. So, but as a whole, I appreciate that he does that. In the big picture.
We saw Kapler take his pitcher out in the 3rd inning, 4th inning at 40, 50 pitches just because of the matchup. We saw him burn the entire bench just because the analytics were going righty, lefty, lefty. And he would have nobody off the bench in the 7th inning. So, I mean, it's a breath of fresh air for sure.
Maybe forgot which twin was available.
Let's go play outside. They both cannot play outside.
Oh, that's hilarious. It's like the twin. What is it? The thing where like the twins have they're I don't even know what they call it. Like they're always on the same. Yeah. And it's like if he's feeling tired, I'm feeling tired. I can't throw. It's hilarious. But yeah. No, I mean, on the whole, I want Farhan gone above anything. Like, I think you got to move Farhan. And then to me, just whoever comes in can make the decision on Bo Mel. I'm not opposed to Bo Mel getting another season because, he is a 3-time manager of the year. He knows what he's doing. He's just not a good fit currently. And, maybe he's just, maybe the game's passing him. Who knows? But this is a guy that's been a really good manager for a really long time and pretty recently. So it's not like I think he just forgot how to do what he's doing. Yeah. But That said, I'd really like to see Farhan gone. I'd really love it if they get rid of Veely. I just don't like the hitting philosophy of this franchise for the last 3 or so years.
What I would do, get rid of Veely, keep Pat, and promote Damon Minor. Minor's proven he can develop these guys in AAA. Pair him up with a veteran like Pat Burrell. Like, dude, you can only succeed with that. So I would go with that duo.
Yeah, Damon Minor's done an awesome job in Sacramento. There's a few guys that have not quite met expectations down there, but I mean that's going to happen every year. You're never going to bat 1,000, so to speak. Sable. In fairness, Luis Matos has been largely disappointing in AAA this season. Granted, Minor was there last season and Matos was amazing, so I'm not going to be like, oh, he forgot how to coach. But Matos is having a rough year. Luciano's having a rough year. But a few guys have gone there and they've done better. Guys like McRae was doing really well in AAA. Brett Wisely was doing really well early in the year. Ramos was doing really well early in the year. There's a lot of guys that have been successful. Casey Schmidt had looked like he was taking strides in AAA, was looking really good in AAA. A lot of guys that have made progress in AAA under Damon Minor. He's a guy I would be totally for if they wanted to bring him up as the hitting coach and give him an opportunity. Or, hey, here's a name for you. How about Travis Ishikawa?
Yeah.
Burrell came straight up from San Jose.
Yeah. Where's isn't Panic a first base coach?
I'm not sure. Panic's like that one. I'm not positive on. I'd have to look.
He's some sort of coach. I just don't know what.
I saw him in Richmond like a month ago. Yeah. I just saw he was in Richmond for one of their games. So I'm not sure.
I don't know.
But yeah, to me, should be up to the next Pobo though. Who stays? Yeah. So just
I would probably
go from there.
I would probably move Pete Patilla up to Pobo.
I would be all for it. Honestly, I like Pete Patilla.
I give Patilla a lot of I give him a lot of credit for the last 2 drafts.
Yeah. Look, and I can understand why people are like, Pete Patilla is just, he needs to go with Farhan. I understand the people that want to clean out the entire front office. I get it. And if the Giants were to go that route, I can't say I necessarily would be thinking that it's a bad thing. Yeah. But that said, since Pete Patilla has come up, there's been a couple things 3 things specifically that have improved since he's been here after Scott Harris left. Number 1, they've been way more aggressive moving guys through the minor leagues. Yeah. I don't know if you guys all remember the first 4 years that Farhan was running everything, guys barely moved. Yeah. You had guys like Vaughn Brown and McRae having these insane seasons, and they sat at their levels for entire seasons. Now, they've plateaued. They haven't, Vaughn Brown plateaued. He's probably not going to ever get above AA. McRae kind of had a tough year. Hasn't really started hitting the ball or making a lot of contact. He's still striking out a ton. That's where I was trying to go with that. But he's continued to move on, but a lot of guys just didn't move. Now Patilla comes up. He spends a week at a time at different levels. He talks a lot about that. And all of a sudden you see guys getting advanced quicker. So I think he's doing a lot of the internal evaluations for the Giants farm system. Personally, that's just my belief. I have nothing to back this other than listening to different interviews and things like that. And Patilla talking about how he's going to these different levels and spending a whole week, watching these teams play. Also, number 2, Mike S. mentions going to Korea to watch Jung-Hoo Lee. I think it sounds like he played a major part in that recruitment. So I'm going to give him some credit there. And then number 3, the entire draft philosophy for the Giants changed when Patilla showed up.
Yes.
And I love their last 2 drafts.
Yes.
The previous 4, very much a mixed bag. I mean, 2019 and 2021 looked like giant whiffs. Yeah. And 2020 looks like it could be really good. How good, we'll see. I feel like we were all feeling better about it about mid-season last season than we do now. But, at least Bailey and Harrison look like they're going to be solid players. And Schmidt, the back, we'll see. Case is still out on that one.
Yeah.
And then 2022, we'll see. They might end up with a decent draft out of that. Wisenhunt's still a highly rated prospect. Birdsong's in the majors. Crawford might be a bullpen arm, but if those three guys are major league arms, you're going to feel pretty good about that draft. But the last two drafts, I felt like the philosophy changed, and it's a lot better than what they've done the first 4 years. So that's where I give Patilla credit. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, so Michael Holmes is like, usually Holmes, like they run the draft. I just can't say it's a coincidence that Patilla shows up and the philosophy changes.
Yeah.
I cannot think that that's a coincidence, but maybe it is. I mean, I'm not in the room. I don't know. It's entirely possible, but just, to me, it's odd that the second he shows up, they change the way they do it.
I think it's kind of like a collaborative effort, because you saw Harris wasn't as involved to an extent with Holmes as it appears that Patilla is now. So I think it's more of like you touched on, kind of a philosophy change once Patilla got into that role, and he kind of helps out Holmes a lot more in an in-depth level.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I'm not going to be mad if they don't go Patilla. If they were to move Farhan and they move, fine. Yeah. I'm not pounding the table for the guy. I just like him probably more than a lot of people do, and I'd be all for it. So
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Pete for Pobo, first order of business is to trade for Kyle Tucker.
I wish. I love Kyle Tucker. Yeah. He'd be awesome to have.
Yeah. Tucker's awesome. But yeah.